So, in the course of her conversation with Damon, Rhaenyra not necessarily reveals, but mentions that part of her apprehension about getting married is that marriage can be a dangerous proposition for women. She saw it with her own mother. This heavy expectation is placed upon women in the realm for them to give birth, for them to become pregnant and have children. And with her mother gave birth to her. And we saw in the first episode that her mother attempted to give birth to this other child. It's not shown in the series, but I believe she also was pregnant and gave birth to other children, but like none of them were males. And none of them made it past infancy. Rhaenyra is the only surviving child. Her life was pretty much sacrificed for the possibility of Viserys having a son, right? Because of this whole succession thing. And you look at the women around them, you look at even Alicent now, where a major part of why Viserys married her was this expectation but also hope that in him remarrying, that it would provide more opportunities for him and his new wife to have more children. And then especially within having more children, to have a male child. And because within the series that, a lot of children don't make it through infancy and whatnot, it's not enough even for you to have a male child, but you're probably going to want at least a spare, right? For lack of a better term. And so with that, there's going to be expectation for Alicent to become pregnant more than once. Rhaenyra having seen what her mother went through and looking around her and whatnot, the expectations and responsibilities that are placed upon her, is hesitant to rush into a marriage where once she's married to this person and through her they now have access to or proximity to the Iron Throne and all that entails. She wants to ensure that the person she marries, that they'll actually care about her as a person and not just the title or position she holds as a result of being Viserys' daughter and his current heir. And Daemon tries to ease her fears that, marriage doesn't have to be a bad thing. And while it might be to some degree, that's a part of life. That things might go wrong shouldn't be a strong enough reason for you not to live your life, right? It shouldn't hold you, the fear that things might go wrong shouldn't hold you back from living life or experiencing life. A major part of the series concern over maybe like the last two episodes, episode 3 and 4, has been Rhaenyra getting married. Viserys' body is like a hot mess with all of these afflictions that he has going on. He's actually quite a bit older than her. And this white hair does not suit him very well. He looks like a decrepit old man, especially, with all these wounds and whatnot. There's this conversation, especially within this episode, about the expectations and duties of women, right? And really going back to the first episode, right, where Rhaenyra and her mother had that first conversation, and Rhaenyra spoke about wanting freedom and the life that she saw for herself, while her mother expressed that as women within this royal family, their role, their duty, their battlefield is when they're in labor, right? Bringing forth future generation. And we see the sacrifices that her mother made, right? In her life being sacrificed for this potential child. And the conversation continues on into this, really has continued on over the various episodes. This thing of these women within the society making these great sacrifices, becoming pregnant and whatnot, the expectations that are placed upon them. But then it's like, at the same time, Rhaenyra, it's never really explained why, but really just, I guess, tradition and land rights and property rights and inheritance expectations and whatnot. This thing as to why much of the population seems to be against the idea of Rhaenyra being heir, and even were against Rhaenyra's being heir. And so, by the time we get to this episode, in her conversation, she has this conversation with Daemon, but then later on, after all of the drama and whatnot, in conversation with Viserys, she states to him, which is, we don't really see it as much here, but we see it later on in Game of Thrones, where so much is made of the females in the royal family, or just females really in general, their maidenhood, for lack of a better term. There's far less emphasis or interest in men of the royal family preserving their chastity, let's say. And so, Rhaenyra points this out to Viserys, and it's actually a pretty valid point, right? Where there's so much concern, it's like it's a huge scandal for just the idea of Rhaenyra having been in this pleasure palace, or, having been sexually experienced prior to her marriage, right? Like, it can throw all of these plans into disarray. And even, the episode ends with one of the maesters coming to visit Rhaenyra, and he has a potion of sorts, or a medicine of sorts, which turns out to be like some kind of, you could think of it as like an abortion elixir or something like that, right? Intended to bring about an abortion should she be pregnant. And it's like, it speaks to how much importance is really placed upon pregnancy, childbirth, and all of these kinds of things. And it's like, not to get too far off on a tangent, but it's like, if you think of it with, at least within America, within today's climate, and these conversations about women's bodies, women's rights, and reproductive choices and things like that, it's quite interesting, right? I like things like this where, not to say that the show is necessarily influenced by current events, but where you have, be it like movies or TV shows of this nature, where it's art, yes, because it's creative, it's storytelling, it's fiction, but at the same time, the circumstances and situations, the time frame might be different, the time period might be different, but there's still like these very human themes and conversations taking place within the story, right? This thing about the role that women play in society, the expectations placed upon them, and then at the same time, the freedoms or curtailment of freedoms that they experience largely because of their gender.
Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.